How far can you see at night? In this video, I'm going to tell you my favorite all-time story. It has to do with this question. How far can you see at night? Let me ask you that question in some other ways, some ways that will make it more personal. Here's one. When tough circumstances close in on you, can you see beyond them? When someone or something is in your face, pressing you, can you see beyond the moment? When you have to make a difficult decision, spiritual or otherwise, what gives you perspective? How far can you see beyond your circumstances? And one more question. Do you see things with an eternal perspective? So here's my favorite story. It's about a cutthroat lawyer grilling an older man. I got it years ago at a meeting of a few leaders who had gathered to discuss the things of God. I flew in from the Northeast where I lived then, and a university president flew in from the Northwest. On his flight in, he read a story in a news magazine and then read it to us at the meeting. I remember it to this day. It's the story of 84-year-old Mr. Tucker. Here's how it goes. Mr. and Mrs. Tucker, they were sitting on their porch at dusk one evening when three young men broke into a house halfway down their block. Mrs. Tucker went inside to call the police, so as the only witness, Mr. Tucker watched very carefully. The police came and caught the men, arrested them, and took them into custody. Now, let's fast forward to their day in court. Mr. Tucker arrived at the courthouse to take his stand for justice. He respected the law and saw testifying as his civil duty. But the young men's lawyer saw Mr. Tucker as the enemy. The lawyer knew that his only chance was to discredit the old man's testimony. When Mr. Tucker came to the stand, he put his hand on the Bible and swore with all of his might to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And I'll tell you, he meant every word. The defense attorney rushed right up into his face, to where Mr. Tucker could actually feel the lawyer's breath. The lawyer started. Mr. Tucker, are you here to tell us that you think you saw these young men commit this crime? Yes, sir, I saw them, Mr. Tucker replied in a soft, courtly voice. Speak up, Mr. Tucker, speak up. I don't think the jury can hear you, the lawyer boomed. You don't have to shout. I'm not deaf. The tension of the moment making Mr. Tucker sit up even straighter. I'm not interested in your ears, Mr. Tucker. None of us are. We're interested in your eyes. Now, what time of the day was it when you think you saw this crime? It was evening, dusk, almost nighttime. Night? Nighttime? Where were you? Well, I was on our front porch. And just how far would you say that your porch was from the scene of the alleged crime? Now the old man saw the jaws of the trap opening before him, and shaking his head, he answered, Oh, I'd guess 40 or 50 yards. 40 or 50 yards? Half the length of a football field? The lawyer pressed on. How old are you, Mr. Tucker? Sitting up even straighter, he said, Sir, I am 84 years old. 84 years old? At your age, Mr. Tucker, you must wear glasses, don't you? Well, only when I read the news. That's enough, Mr. Tucker. We all know that eyesight diminishes with age, and you wear glasses. You're elderly. You're 84 years old. You were half a football field away, and it was nighttime. Do you really really expect the fine men and women of this jury to convict these young men based just on your weak testimony? Smelling victory, the lawyer went in for the kill. I really only have one last question for you, Mr. Tucker. One last question. Tell us, Mr. Tucker, just how far can you see at night? Come on now, tell us. How far can you see at night? The old man paused. He took a deep breath. He looked straight into the lawyer's eyes and said, I can see the moon. How far is that? I love that story. It's about perspective, calm perspective in the midst of the pressure of the moment. Now, how does that apply to you and me? Well, King Solomon wrote in the Old Testament that God has set eternity in their heart. That's about us. God has put eternity in our hearts. That means that you and I have an internal point of reference, an internal compass pointing to eternity, an internal, eternal compass. God has put that in our hearts. And you know it's there. You know in your heart of hearts that there's something more than the present moment, something more than this just earthly life. So, when someone or something is in your face pressing you, remember to ask yourself, I can see eternity. How far is that? When facing a difficult decision, ask yourself, I can see eternity. How far is that? And when the darkness of this world closes in, I can see eternity. How far is that? Always look beyond your present pressing circumstances. Remember that internal compass. God has put eternity in your heart. Remember there is more to life than this moment, more to your life than just your present life. Look at your circumstances with an eternal perspective. How far can I see at night? I can see eternity. How far is that? How far can you see at night? You can see eternity. How far is that? Skeptic, seeker, believer, God has put eternity in your heart. Live with an eternal perspective. And one more thing, if you have a pressing decision to make about where you'll spend eternity, please visit 911god.org. It's linked from the justaquestion.org homepage. I'm John Morris, and this has been Just a Question.